Nadia Jama, and welcome to Educate, Agitate, Organise Saturday. This is a joint venture between Don't Leave Organise and Socialist Telly. And the premise of this show is really to spotlight all of the activists and all of the campaigns that they're running up and down the country. So no campaign is too big and no campaign is too small. Please get in touch if you want to have your campaign on our show.
And this week, we're featuring a campaign that really gets to the heart of everything we're about. We are a democratic socialist party. And this campaign is about democracy within that party. So Nadia, without further ado, I'd like to take us over to our guests.
Really looking forward to this.
My guests this evening are Cathy Augustine from the Labour Representation Committee and Martin Meyer, who is the Secretary for the Sheffield Trades Council, a former bus driver and also a former NEC member, and they're key activists with a really, really important, really timely campaign, which is called Reclaim Democracy, Recall Conference. Cathy, Martin, thank you for joining us.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
So, look, I mean, I think it's fair to say these are really unprecedented times for the Labour Party. We haven't now had a full conference since 2019. The left is under sustained attack. We've seen attacks on democracy and the shutting down of CLPs. We have this situation in Liverpool that we don't quite understand what's going on, but it really does leave the party open to allegations of racial discrimination and all sorts of other problems. I mean, Cathy, I wonder if you could just kind of, where are we at as a party right now?
Well, there was a really interesting but quite demoralising article in Dorset Eye the other day that lists all the backtracking that the leadership has done in terms of democracy, in terms of our policies, in terms of the 10 leadership pledges. All of these seem to have been broken, thrown away and stamped on, really. And as you say, we have had many, many fantastic comrades unfairly smeared and suspended for no apparent reason. People's suspension letters are obviously confidential, but people have shared that there was no valid or meaningful reason behind their suspension. And equally, some have been unsuspended with no apparent explanation. So it's as though our party, the party of democracy, socialism, inclusivity, the party that we all campaigned for until quite recently for the many, has become the party for the few. And this is it's just been turned on its head, and people are very, very angry, obviously, upset, disappointed at the loss of our voices in a democratic process, but also the loss of our democratically agreed transformative policies to improve our lives. That, again, is all slipping away. This loss of democracy, loss of our policies, and with that, a loss of hope.
And something else that seems to be slipping away. I mean, there was a Kantar poll out just today, I think, and we've gone back four points as a party. And all of the minor parties are now climbing again. I mean, Martin, I mean, this is a real problem, isn't it? Where are we headed?
Well, it's a scandal, really, that we've allowed this to get to this stage. I mean, for Labour to be behind in the polls against, the most terrible government, which has been responsible for the deaths of 100,000 people through, the ideological obsession with the private sector, with free enterprise, its responsibility for, the aftermath of austerity, leaving our NHS and our other public services so stretched and strained even before this pandemic began. And, the fact that working people have borne the brunt of this disease, the lack of protection at work, the schools issue, how this has been mishandled. And yet we have a leadership of the Labour Party that appears to be falling over itself to agree with the government. and not making the political capital that it should be doing out of this. And then when you come to, putting the alternative, which, only a year ago, we were arguing for, democratic socialism as the alternative to this failed and broken capitalist system. And now we're bereft of ideas, and we're putting forward a new borrowing scheme for people who've got enough money in the bank to save. I mean, this is awful. I mean, that's the political side. But you have to understand why that's happened. The right wing have gained control of our party, and they hated the democratic socialist principles of the Corbyn era, and they don't have anything substantial to put in place except to appear respectable and as near to the Tories as possible. And that's electoral disaster. And so many people in the Labour Party feel that with anger and frustration and despair. And then on top of that, Matt, we've got this massive assault on democracy well within the party, an authoritarian style of leadership, which, you could say it reminds us of the Blair period. I think it's much worse than anything we saw under that centralised power structure that Blair set up. So it's a very, very bleak and dangerous position we're in by the Labour Party.
And it seems so. It seems to be a project that's failing on its own terms. This is the thing. I mean, they've wrested control of a bus only to then drive it over a cliff. So, what's the solution to this?
Just be careful about the bus analogies. I used to be a bus driver. Okay, but yes, you're right. I mean, this is what is so frustrating. Look at the popularity of the manifesto that we had under Jeremy Corbyn, and the way in which young people in particular surged into the party. We became the largest political party in Europe with over 500,000 members. I mean, it's only a few years ago we were struggling on just over 150,000 members and wondering if we could ever balance the books. And that inspiration, that enthusiasm, that the vision, the hope that we were giving, it's just all been given away. Just like that. And it's not working. It's not inspiring people. Everyone's turning around now. Even the establishment, by the way, is not convinced by Keir Starmer's compromises with capitalism and with the Tory manifesto as it stands at the moment. It's falling on its face. And we are going to pay a massive price for this in the elections. There's something else, Matt, is that the foot soldiers of the Labour Party have always been the left-wingers. We've been the enthusiastic people who've been out. We did it, whoever was our leader. We did it for Tony Blair because we knew a Blair government was better than a Tory government, but we were the enthusiasts that went out. But what I'm seeing now is that despair is leading to a refusal to go out and put those leaflets out. And I think that we're going to see a sign of that starting with these May elections that's coming up for the council.
And so, Cathy, what's the solution to this? Talk us through the campaign.
So, as you know, Matt, I'm also active within Don't Leave Organise. So Don't Leave Organise was set up probably about a year ago, or we were certainly thinking of launching it about a year ago, after the leadership election of Starmer. So as an umbrella organisation, bringing together a united left, we're saying don't leave the party, organise. So this is a campaign that DLO really wants to organise around. At the time, again, Don't Leave Organise was talking to various figures on the left. And in a recording, I saw a video of an event with John McDonnell. He said, if you do leave the party, it's like having to shout through the letterbox and peep through the keyhole. So Martin has explained absolutely why people feel they need to leave. But we have to find a reason to stay. And the reason to stay, for me, is to fight. Very difficult. You know, we're all being crushed. But by using this campaign of a recall conference with the hashtag Reclaim Democracy Recall Conference, there is something absolutely concrete and fairly time-bound, because there is a meeting of the NEC Organisation Committee on the 11th of March, and a motion will be put to them with all the pressure that we've built up through all the CLPs that have managed to pass this motion, all these people who have passed their motion in union branches, plus, of course, so it's grassroots, it's top down and it's bottom up. So we are bringing in people, Socialist Campaign Group MP members, some members of the NEC, the Grassroots 5, but also other trade union reps on the NEC, lots of unions. Unite is on board, Fire Brigades Union, Bakers. We're talking to the CWU. We're bringing in and convincing people to support this, because it is something possible for us to achieve. There is something in the rule book that we can point to and say, recall conference, within our press release, and I will just check the clauses because they're not my forte. There are clauses within the rule book that allow for a recall conference, and we're calling it a recall because we want to recall the conference of 2019. 2020 was not a real conference. It wasn't, the sovereign body of our party. There was no business. It was like a propaganda rally for the leadership. So this is why we have hit on this as a concrete and powerful way forward that will mobilise people into a demand that the NEC has to listen to. And if they reject it, then we have mobilised a whole swathe of the left.
And we're going to go to, we've got a short video which has got lots of real kind of important people in our movement endorsing this. So we're just going to quickly go to that video now.
We need to reclaim democracy in our Labour Party.
That's why we ask you to support the call for a recall conference.
What we are allowed to talk about in our Labour Party meetings is being suppressed.
Members who challenge are being suspended.
Too many members have left the party.
Many that remain feel frustrated, angry and ignored.
But there is a way out of this crisis.
We call for an emergency virtual conference as soon as possible.
We can do this by putting motions to our constituency Labour parties and demanding the NEC take action now.
Our Labour Party conference is our supreme decision-making body of the Labour Party.
A strong union of our constituency Labour parties.
Our trade unions.
And our affiliated organisations.
Take the Reclaim Democracy Recall Conference motion to your constituency Labour Party meeting.
It is an emergency motion.
That's because it needs to be received by the National Executive Committee before the 11th of March.
Let's win back member support so that we can win for Labour.
So we've just heard there from people from across the movement. How have you gone about there's obviously quite a broad coalition of support for this. So Martin, how have you gone about bringing those people together?
Well, you're right. It's an impressive coalition, actually. We're talking about trade unions, Labour Party members, activists, there's a range of different organisations on the left of the Labour Party and has been for many years now. And bringing them on board with all the links that we have. And of course, the ordinary membership, which we're reaching out to as we speak. And of course, using social media to the full. I mean, beyond my capabilities, but, there's a Facebook page, there's Twitter Storm. There's a whole range of different ways in which we're trying to get the message across and bring people together and mobilize them. Because you see, one of the problems is when we're in this crisis, Cathy just mentioned about people leaving. The last thing we want is for people to say, "Oh well, this is no good for me, this party. I'm going to go." That's the way you let the right win. And by the way, I don't think the right can win this or will win it. And I think this is the important point we've got to get across, because the party in its actual membership makeup hasn't changed from Corbyn's days. It's a left-wing membership base. If we were to be successful, and I hope we will be, in getting this reclaimed democracy recall conference together, there's no doubt in my mind that we will be able to hold this leadership to account. And it will be a left conference demanding answers and demanding changes. That's why this is so important. And it's also something that you can't suppress the call for a reclaim conference. You can't say this somehow. You can't say that this is something that is against the rules under the new leadership. It's not. But it is a way of getting people to come together and actually do something when so far everybody's attempt to pass a motion of protest has been suppressed, or out of fear they've not even dared to discuss it. And we want to overcome that sense of fear, that sense that, would we put this motion? Oh, we might get into trouble. And by bringing people together, what we're finding is that it's not just the usual culprits on the left that's backing this, because the effect of the right-wing authoritarianism on the party has shocked people right across the political spectrum. And we're finding those people in the centre and the centre-right saying, you've got a damn good point. We might not agree with everything you say, but at least we should have democracy in our Labour Party. At least we've always had the right to put a motion to our CLP. And it's not right that the leadership can suddenly turn around and suspend. And
picking up on that point, Martin, and just so that listeners, the audience is aware, our motion is very, very simple for the very reasons that Martin has pointed out.
We should probably clarify as well, shouldn't we? That's what we're asking for. That's the main mechanism by which we can demand for this recall conference. It's passing a motion of CLPs. Sorry, Cathy, interrupted you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Matt. And that motion can be found on our Facebook page. I think you're sharing some links to that. And it's available as well as a Google Doc that people can slightly adapt with their CLP name. We'd like to keep the wording the same because we have checked this. We've checked it with our campaign team. We've checked it with some legal people just to make sure it has the very best chance of not being thrown out. So there is no technical or legal reason that this motion cannot be heard at your CLPs or your union branches. So it's important to get it through affiliated organisations as well as CLPs so that the whole movement is coming together around this call.
And it's snowballing, isn't it? The number of CLPs who are passing this motion. I think sort of Islington North were out of the gates quite quickly, as they often are with these things. But
lots of Unite community branches.
Yeah,
they're always very active at doing this sort of thing.
So I would really urge you go and find that. You can use the hashtag Reclaim Democracy Recall Conference, which we'll put up on the screen now. And if you put that into Twitter, you'll be able to find the campaign and you'll be able to find your way to those resources as well. I just want to go back to Martin's really important point there about, fundamentally, this is about defending the principle of democracy in the party. And I started doing a little ritual where almost on a daily basis I check the back of the membership card just to make sure the wording hasn't changed. And that first sentence is still, we are a democratic socialist party.
Well, look, the party is made up of its members. You know, the last thing you want is a party in which an elected leader dictates then for 5 years or for however long that person is leader, and that everybody then has to follow suit. But of course, the right wing always remember the success of the Blair period. But I think what they forget is that that was a success to start with after 18 years of Tory government. But each successive election, Labour was losing votes in massive amounts. And it was because by the time we got to the 2010 election, that centralised right wing, ignoring the unions, ignoring the working people, was no longer effective in keeping people in the party or voting. And at a time now where we've learned even more lessons about the failures of the system, when the poor are even poorer and the rich are even richer, when we have a housing crisis of enormous proportion, when there's, you know, we live now in food bank Britain, don't we? It wasn't like that in 2010, after years of austerity. We desperately need a much more radical left agenda in the Labour Party. And it's the members, it's their responsibility to discuss that, debate it, and agree it. And if we're going to be stopped from doing that, and there's every sign that's the full intention of the current leadership, then we're in, an almighty crisis for democracy in this country, never mind the Labour Party. That's why this is so important. And to bring people together around this campaign for a reclaimed democracy recall conference is so important. And I'm really pleased how, after a late start off the buffers, on the 8th of February, we didn't say anything about it until we thought we'd got the model motion right and we got, the people ready to come out and speak for it and have a campaign to roll it out. It's only just over a couple of weeks ago, and the response we've got has been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. CLP after CLP taking this motion and voting for it in very big majorities, which I think is a very, very clear message to the Labour leadership that they can't ignore. And if they do ignore it, they ignore it at their peril. They ignore it at their peril because you cannot, at the end of the day, continue to run the party without the backing.
I'd like to come in on some of Martin's points about New Labour and also a point Martin made earlier about, the leadership is failing even on its own terms. So, we talk about the failures of successive New Labour governments. And I think we have to remember that period was the start. It was the beginning of the crumbling of the Red Wall. Because during that period, those Red Wall constituencies were completely taken for granted. They had MPs or candidates helicoptered in from outside their areas who knew nothing about their heritage, their history, and what those communities really needed. And all that goes back to that New Labour period. Equally, New Labour under Tony Blair brought in a very monolithic, bureaucratic way of making policy. We're reverting to that through the National Policy Forum, whereas, we'd been used to talking about policy at our CLPs and getting motions passed and actually participating in that. So all these things are again at stake. It's the loss, it's going back to austerity, back to monolithic bureaucracy and diktats, and it's just going back to shutting down members' voices and turning us back into those foot soldiers that Martin mentioned earlier. And we're not having it. We're not going to have it. And that's the whole reason. For this, we want our party back.
And I think what's been particularly shocking is the speed of this as well. I mean, even Blair made overtures to the left. Blair talked about socialism in the beginning.
Well, you know, I never expected Keir Starmer to be like that. I mean, I voted for Rebecca Long-Bailey's the left candidate, and I've got a lot of respect. She's been a great leader. But I know many people with similar views to mine and Cathy's voted for Keir. And I was aware of people warning what a right-wing leader he would be. And I was rather sceptical of that because I didn't think he would be. So the first thing is to say I'm surprised. The other thing is to say I'm really angry about it because I think people have been duped. You know, many people who voted for Keir will not be agreeing with what he's doing at the moment. You know, the comparisons with Tony Blair is quite interesting because Tony Blair was quite keen to keep the left on board as much as was needed. So he always had some left-wingers in the cabinet. I mean, do you remember the excuse he used just to get rid of Rebecca Long-Bailey right from the word go? This was the start. And then, of course, the absolutely shocking treatment of our former leader, Jeremy Corbyn. But, you know, then it gets to the raft of suspensions of ordinary members of the party for daring to question that, to complain about it and say, whoa, hang on, you can't do that to a leader that we support and have a lot of respect for, and to treat him in that way. And then even when the NEC panel agreed that he should come back into the fold to make the decision that the whip will not be restored. But then since then, we've had, you know, councillors' selections overturned. And I think the most serious thing is what's happened in Liverpool just the other day. Now, this is to me is worse than anything that happened in the Tony Blair period. I mean, you mentioned, Matt, about candidates being parachuted in to consider, or was it Cathy parachuted in against the wishes of the local party? But this is after a legitimate selection process has taken place, and to then prevent those shortlisted candidates from even taking part in a process, and to impose a candidate of the wishes of the General Secretary on Liverpool. It's appalling. It is unacceptable. And that in itself, apart from all the other things I've mentioned, is enough reason to say, you know, reclaim democracy, recall conference as the only way out here, the solution that we need, and to make sure that instead of just accepting this and turning the other way, you know, there's a fight in people like us, and we are not going to let them get away.
So, you know, when we say the leadership, however angry we all are with Starmer, we must remember it is even broader than just that. And so we must hold that leadership to account. We must hold that leadership to account against the democratically agreed policies of our last conference, our last proper delegate conference, against the pledges that Starmer made. And we can only do that through the sovereign body of the party, which is conference. So reclaim democracy, recall conference.
I think that was a really important point about that just blanket, well, we're quite willing to sort of suspend tens of thousands of members, this sort of Stalinist-esque sort of purge. It really dehumanizes the membership. Yeah. Because there's a huge impact, there's a huge emotional cost to people, sometimes a financial cost to people of being suspended from the party. It causes huge damage. It causes... You know, a lot of people, the party is their support network, it's their family, and just to sort of casually dismiss people from, not even for stuff that they've said, but for being adjacent to things that have been said that the leadership disagree with.
Matt, can I come in there? Because this isn't new, of course, and to a certain extent, we've had a history of suspensions in the recent period, particularly not because of, not under Jeremy Corbyn himself, but under Ian McNichol when he was General Secretary, and I was on the NEC at that time. And we had, in those leadership elections, the most extraordinary effort was done to trawl through people's social media, and on the slightest excuse, people were being suspended. And I knew, well, I know a really nice woman member in my local constituency who found herself suspended for simply retweeting a tweet which had originated from the Green Party, but in favour of Labour's policy for the NHS. And she was mortified. She was in tears. The embarrassment to her that she would be somebody that people could point to and say, you've been suspended from the party because you're probably wrong. The fear of this being known by her employer or by her people at work. So, you're right. This does a lot of damage to people. It's a much more sinister thing to have this done to you than perhaps a lot of people realise. I mean, I know many people who have been able to brush it off and say, well, I stood up and I don't care. But for a lot of people, it's very hurtful indeed. It's a very nasty weapon, particularly where they're then left waiting, in some cases for months, even years before they get justice.
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember the effect this has on people's mental health. I mean, particularly as we are in lockdown as well. We're going through a pandemic. And as Martin says so rightly, the Labour Party for many people is part of their support network and their comrades, their friends.
Yes, it is, yeah.
And again, it may be months and months and in some case years that people are left hanging. We cannot underestimate the effect this has on people's mental health.
So, look, we've got another set of video messages. These ones are from young comrades. So we're going to go to that now. And then when we come back, I really want to talk about what can people do. Hopefully, they've watched this and they've thought, right, now's the time to stand up and fight. We've got to do something about this. So we're just going to go to the VT and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the practical steps that people can take.
Labour's right-wing leadership have launched a civil war within the Labour Party, and it is a war against the left-wing membership. Scandalously, they've suspended Jeremy Corbyn, they've suspended dozens of ordinary members, shut down debate and seized control of local parties.
The right are more interested in attacking members than they are attacking the Tories. Therefore, as members, we say, enough is enough. This is a call to arms.
Only the membership can resolve this crisis. We must fight back and demand an immediate recall Labour conference.
The Labour Party National Conference is the highest body in the party, made up of members from CLPs and affiliated trade unions. Only it has the power to decide the fate of Jeremy Corbyn within the party, and only it has the power to decide who or who should not be a Labour MP, or the General Secretary for that matter.
Only it can decide our socialist principles against those who want to abandon them.
Only it can stop this purge.
The fight back starts now.
Let the members take back control. Pass the emergency recall motion at your Labour and trade union meeting.
The National Executive Committee meets on the 11th of March. They must feel the pressure from the rank and file. Don't get angry, get even. Support the call for a recall conference.
The future of the Labour Party is at stake.
Another set of really important messages there from younger comrades. Again, we'll put the hashtag up on the screen. Reclaim democracy, recall conference. Cathy, do you want to talk us through what are practical steps, people out there watching, what can they do, how can they help, how can they get involved?
Sure. Well, we've just heard very powerfully from some young comrades that they feel very, very strongly about Reclaim Democracy Recall Conference. Many of us, not just young people, but I think we can agree, particularly young people, joined the party at the time Jeremy Corbyn became leader because they saw a different future. They saw hope. And that hope is now slipping away again. So really important to hear voices of younger comrades supporting in this way. And they said it very clearly. We need to recall conference. We do that through a very simple motion. We've explained previously where you can find that motion. It has been checked over by some legal minds, so it should have every chance of getting through at CLPs and union branches. Martin can tell us where we can find that, but it's very simple. Get the motion, get it passed, organise your comrades to come along to the meeting where it's being heard.
And just, I want to hear from Martin in a second about the next steps for the campaign, but just so I think probably some of the people watching this, I mean, look, a lot of the stuff that's gone on seems to be happening from completely unaccountable regional offices and all the rest of it, who are very capable of putting pressure on CLP secretaries and chairs. What do people do if their chair, under that sort of pressure, pushes back on this?
So there is there's guidance in the rule book to challenge your chair at a CLP meeting. So that needs someone to say, stand up. Well, so the motion is presented that if the chair refuses it, 4 people need to challenge the chair and say, we challenge your decision on a point of order. The chair then has to accept the challenge and ask the room, the meeting, to vote. If there is a 2/3 majority of that meeting that votes in favour of hearing the Reclaim Democracy Recall Conference motion, it then has to be heard. It can then be debated and voted on, and the results of that are treated in the way that any motion would be, sent on to the NEC, whatever, with the voting. And as I think someone mentioned earlier, in CLPs that the majority have succeeded in having the motion heard and have passed it, those voting for the motion, it's been almost unanimous, overwhelmingly in favour. And as we said before, that shows that it's not just the left who are thinking this is not the way to run our party. So yes, if there's a blockage from the chair, there is no reason for it. We've checked the motion and you can challenge in the way I've just explained.
And we should reiterate as well, as Cathy said, this has been looked at by legal eagles, as it were. This is within the rule book. This is within your democratic rights. There is no grounds.
Absolutely.
Martin, what's next for the campaign?
Well, obviously, we're now trying to build as much support we can through getting these motions passed. We're asking people to table it as an emergency motion. And the reason for that is that the target date to get it to the next Labour NEC meeting, which actually is what an organisation subcommittee, but it does in fact encompass all the members, and that's on the 11th of March. And the reason we've gone for such a quick date is that we want to see a conference this spring. You know, we don't want to be waiting until June or July or then even September. It's too urgent. Who knows what's going to happen in the next month even at the rate this is going. You know, that decision about Liverpool, for instance, a shocking portender of, you know, absolutely no bounds on what this leadership might expect. So to get that urgency across is really, really important for us. And so we've been discussing today, Cathy, about a rally, an online rally, which we're going to be holding on the 6th of March. We've just been putting the final touches to that, but we'll be advertising that very, very shortly. We've got speakers from across the trade union movement, from the various left organisations in our party that have signed up for the campaign, from ordinary members, from young members, from BAME members as well. And I think that's going to be a great rallying call. And, you know, what we're then going to have is a massive pressure on the NEC to stand up for us It's supposed to be the body that represents all wings of the Labour Party, to stand up for us and say to the leadership, there is a demand there from the membership for democracy, for fairness and justice in our party, and a recall conference. And we're going to grant that because the pressure is so big that to refuse that pressure would be massively dangerous for the NEC and for indeed the party. So that's what we're trying to do. And we're doing as much media publicity as we can, but we actually need everybody's help with this. So if you can be retweeting messages, if you can be putting stuff on Facebook, that really helps us a great deal. Thank you.
And Cathy, do you have any final words for our viewers?
Well, it's very simple. Thank you, Martin, for reminding people it's an emergency motion. That's really important to say. Get the motion passed, and also if you can contact us at the campaign, either through messages on our Facebook page or Twitter, just let us know how you're doing with this. So CLPs that have passed the motion, we're trying to collect them all up, and we put a thank you on our Twitter account and Facebook page, and we also keep a tally. So much is happening at the moment, and meetings, AGMs are happening thick and fast, that every day we hear about more and more CLPs passing this. It would be great to start sharing those big numbers. As I say, so far, thousands of members have passed this motion through their CLPs. So we're really encouraged. Continue doing it. Any questions, contact the campaign. Again, you can do that through Facebook or Twitter, or you could do it through DLO if you have contacts with us. But any questions, please get in touch. Time is absolutely of the essence, and we want to support people as much as possible so they know how to do this in a very simple way.
And Martin, do you have any final words for our viewers this evening?
Thanks for listening, and thanks to you, Matt, for having us on. It's given us an opportunity to explain what this is about and the urgency and the importance of it for democracy. And, I've always said, when somebody tries to shut me up, I'm going to shout even louder. and I'm reminded, of attempts to suppress democracy in other countries around the world. I mean, I'm not making any direct analogies, of course. But, everyone's got the choice. Do you just look the other way? Do you just accept that this is inevitable? Or do you speak up and fight against it? And if you've got, fire in your belly and a passionate heart, and you believe in something, then don't let them take it away. Stand up and fight. And don't feel isolated and depressed, because there's many more people like you out there. And what we can do is by linking up, we can feel some strength and some hope. And I can tell you this, I'm absolutely convinced that this leadership can't continue on this course. It's going to stop, but we need to do something to make that happen.
So, look, really great place to end the discussion. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Normally, this would be the point where I say, can you come back and get follow-up in a few months' time? But I'm hoping it would be lovely to have you both back under different circumstances. I hope this particular campaign is successful and we don't need to revisit this issue. Please support the campaign. We will put all those links up on the screen. And thank you for watching.
Thanks so much for having us. Thank you, Matt. Solidarity.
Solidarity. Thanks very much.
So, Nadia, look, we've heard from guests before how important grassroots democracy within the Labour Party is, that ability to sort of influence the direction and policy of the party. And I think that's why this campaign's so important. What are your thoughts? Obviously, you're a supporter of the campaign.
I am, absolutely. I think party democracy is, we're all socialists. That's what the minimum we expect is to be able to take part in democracy within the party, and I think that's what so many people are so angry with at the moment. And I think so this campaign has really invigorated a lot of members. There's been a lot of take up of the model motion, going to CLPs, to try and make sure that this does get heard at the NEC as soon as possible. So like you said, we've had other guests on that have talked about the democracy within the party and how important conferences, and this is what this recall is all about. It's about going back to conference, because that is the only way some members feel that we can kind of break the current position that we're in. So like I said, really supportive, as are so many other people. We've got the Socialist Campaign of MPs, we've got trade union backing, you can see that there's the FBU, the bakers, Unite. So, it's not just a grassroots campaign, but that's fundamentally where it all starts. The grassroots membership are staking their claim for democracy.
And I think as well, I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I am absolutely sick of my focus having to be on internal Labour Party stuff. I want us all to be able to sort of look outward. There is so much going on in the world, and all these sort of needless distractions and self-harm. Just, I really hope it succeeds. It's really important.
Yeah, I think the members, the grassroots members, see this as allowing us to focus on those things that really do matter, because our attention absolutely has to be on the elections that are upcoming, not just in local councils, but obviously across the nation. So, I think that is why it's seen as urgent, so that we can get to that unity of working towards the common goal of getting Labour elected locally and nationally.
Absolutely. So, look, as we say, please support this campaign. Go find them on Twitter and Facebook using the hashtag Reclaim Democracy Recall Conference. You'll be able to find a motion and loads of other details. As Nadia said, more and more organisations and CLPs and groups are coming out in support of this. Really, really important. Nadia, you got anything to finish with?
Find the model motion, take it to your CLP.
That's it. And look, as Martin said, don't lose heart. There are many of us out there. It's really easy to feel isolated and defeated, but it's stuff like this that really helps us regain and renew that purpose. And I think that's something really important to remember. So don't lose hope. Don't go gentle into that good night. Watch Educate, Agitate, Organise every Saturday night. Thank you. We'll see you next week.